Hello and welcome to, of course, you realize this means podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Graves, and with me today, it is an honor and pleasure to bring to you voice actor and actor David Errigo. David, how are you doing? And welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. How are you doing? And thank you for having me. I guess you can answer after the thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an honor to have you and my pleasure. I am doing well. I just got back from New York City for the first time, so I'm kind of amped.
Ooh.
It was exhilarating. It was a lot of people. It was a lot of walking.
Yeah, I saw that you saw The Shark is Broken. A guy
Oh,
I know
yeah.
named Guy Masterson directed that, and
Yeah.
then Alex Brightman is an old pal from running in New York circles. Not pal, like, but we ran in the same circles. We know each other.
Got it.
It's been fun to see him actually getting into some voiceover stuff as well.
Yeah. I know that he did some TV appearances. What voices has he provided?
Paranormal, Dead End Paranormal Park, I think it was the
Oh,
ultimate title on that. He played the pug, and he was really
nice.
fantastic. He utilized, a great voice for the normal character, and then there's, like, a sort of demon version of the character that's a bit akin to his Beetlejuice voice, actually,
Oh,
that he
nice.
used, and they used him for singing too. Really nice cat. I was always happy to run into him at my friend Ashley Cates.
Cool. Well, you just brought up a dichotomy of characters voiced by one guy and a cat, and we're going to talk about all of that. But first, if you're tiny or toony or a little bit loony, then you've come to the right place. This is where we are talking about Tiny Toons and Looney Tunes and anything to do with Warner Brothers Animation. So be sure to follow and subscribe to keep up to date on the Looniverse. So, David, I'm going to throw it over to you. We are celebrating 33 years of Tiny Toons,
Let's
the original
go.
Steven Spielberg presents Tiny Toons Adventures. Now, this was near and dear to my heart growing up. Did you have a connection to the original show?
Oh,
And were
absolutely.
you watching it religiously like everyone else?
Yes, definitely. Grew up with the show, to the point where my sister and I actually had the, Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spent My Vacation videotape and, like, basically wore it out. You had,
Yeah.
like, Tiny Toons Buster Bust Loose on the Super Nintendo, played the
Amazing game.
heck out of that. Um just a huge fan of those stories and that era of animation on the whole. I mean, that whole sort of, we'll say, 5 years on either side of Tiny Toons, right? You've got some really wonderful stuff happening. You've got the first steps of Cartoon Network, where we're getting really cool sort of older education, right? I'm sitting there watching Josie and the Pussycats and Jabberjaw and the Herculoids and Space Ghost, the original run cartoons, and
Yeah.
all of that stuff alongside the Fox Kids Afternoon, the X-Men, Spider-Man, um, and we get into Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Hysteria, Freakazoid, um,
Batman the Animated Series.
Batman the Animated Series. All of that stuff just sort of contributed. It's like the perfect storm of an education for somebody who winds up wanting to do voiceover.
Absolutely. And it was such a boon for us children. Like we were
Mm.
learning, we were growing, our minds were expanding, and these cartoons were so vibrant and in our faces, we couldn't help but be enamored by what was happening. And it was such a renaissance for
Oh yeah.
Looney Tunes. And because of the shot in the arm that was Saturday morning cartoons and the resurgence through Tiny Toons,
I
it
can't
was
even believe how I forgot though. Like, the start of Cartoon Network, so much of that was running the classic Looney Tunes.
yes, absolutely. Rhapsody Rabbit was one of the first cartoons ever put on Cartoon Network.
Mm.
And real quick, because you mentioned it, How I Spent My Vacation. You and I have this weird, is it a Mandela effect? Is it not? Because I remembered it as How I Spent My Summer Vacation, and I
Same.
can clearly see it on the VHS, and it says
Absolutely.
summer.
Well, but are they the Berenstain Bears or the Berenstain Bears?
Exact. There, absolutely. There's no A. There
Ugh,
is no A, it was always Bernstein.
just full on Matrix stuff. They reprogrammed that. They were like, so here's what we like, and here's what we don't like. We like the letter A. We don't like the letter E. And we're just sitting, all of us are just like, well, I guess we forgot that. Uh,
Yeah, it's been a minute, and that honestly was actually one of the first direct to VHS animated movies that ever was produced, and
oh,
Spielberg
wow.
was, like, a real adamant about it coming to VHS because he knew that a large portion of the animated crowd and audience was at home,
Oh,
was
yeah,
with kids at home, and so it actually did really good numbers.
I bet. I mean, the things I watched on repeat were on VHS. They were the Disney, features. They were, X-Men: Night of the Sentinels that you got at Pizza
Yeah.
Hut on VHS.
I remember that.
They it was Tiny Toon How I Spent My Summer Vacation, like, having it on demand and on repeat at that time was such a novelty that, um, you were that much more inclined to go back to the same thing over and over, where
Yeah.
now having things on demand, you've also got 9 bojillion other things on demand, so, like, I feel like repeat viewing is a little bit lower,
Yes,
on
absolutely.
on a major scale. I think there are still things, especially for young folks, who, or where they will, gravitate to it and be like, "Alright, I am watching this season for the ninth time." And I can only hope that our show, becomes that for some people.
Oh, absolutely. I think it will. I think it's well on its way, and I cannot wait to see more of it.
Mm.
But let's talk about your career. So, working on the daytime Emmy nominated show Ridley Jones as Dudley, congratulations on that nomination, by the way, last
Thank
year.
you. Woohoo!
And providing the voice of Ferb in Phineas and Ferb the movie, Candace Against the Universe.
Mhm.
How has that impacted your career so far?
I mean, Ferb has been this, like, pseudo skeleton key, it felt like.
Mm,
I moved to Los Angeles in 2016, in August, and I got representation December of 2017 and, booked f or excuse me, December of 2016, booked Ferb December of 2017. So, within a year
wow.
of representation in town, I was lucky enough to get my first proper prelay Disney animation thing, right?
Nice.
And, how that happened was Dan and Swampy, the creators, decided to do a crossover episode for their other show, Milo Murphy's Law. And they asked the cast back. Thomas declined. I have no idea why, but I would love to thank him. Thank you. And they sent out auditions. Turned out I could sound like the guy, so then they brought me in. Which one of my favorite stories was as soon as I walk in, Dan Povenmire goes, "Hey, before you say anything, are you from England?" Swampy's the only one that thinks that you're not. And I went, "Oh, no, man. I was born in North Carolina and raised about an hour below Alabama. If I wasn't thinking about it, I'd talk to you like this." And he goes, "Ah! Ah!"
Fantastic story.
So then the cool thing about that, was, like, little bits and bobs would also sort of happen between there and the release of the movie or the announcement that somebody else was taking over the role, i.e. me. Um, but then honestly, going into audition for Ridley Jones with Chris Nee, one of the greatest creators we have. I mean, I've been so blessed to work with such crazy good creators and
There's
showrunners.
so many
It's
wonderful people in
insane.
animation.
Oh
I just
my.
feel like it's overlooked.
I am spoiled with the people that I get to work with. It's it's crazy, but anyway, so I walk into this callback for, Ridley Jones, and immediately the casting director, Maria Estrada, she goes, "Hey, Chris, this is David, he's the new Phineas." I go, "Ferb?" She goes, "Ferb." And immediately, Chris Nee goes, "Ah, Dan and Swampy, I love those guys," and comes up to me and gives me a hug. Now that's something that I consider an intangible, benefit to a role, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what that meant, or at least what I've internalized from that moment going forward, was that there was a level of comfort and trust in the room that maybe not everybody else got to experience, because the showrunner of the show I was auditioning for knew and trusted people who have already hired me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's such a hurdle for any new actor, right?
Sure.
You can be insanely good. You can be the next very, very best thing, which I'm nowhere near claiming. But you could be, empirically. And until somebody takes a chance on you, other people, by and large, will be disinclined. So until you get that sort of one stamp of approval, it's almost like people want to be able to say, I don't know, they were good in that other thing. I don't know what happened. So that they sort of don't have to carry the weight of that choice. And so
Mm.
having the folks at Disney, having Kristen Paiva, um, uh, Swampy and Dan take that chance on me in something so front facing, I think brought down a ton of walls. And then, I mean, getting cast in Ridley Jones and being able to work with the insanely talented people that I was working with. I mean, we go in for our sessions because we started out the show doing group records, and
Oh, okay.
to my right was my buddy Tyler, who I met through the show, and then Ashlyn Madden. So Tyler Shammy, Ashlyn Madden, and then right to their left, you got Bob Bergen. Right to his left,
Legend.
you've got Lorraine Newman. So I'd be
Wow.
doing things like, "Oh, okay, so Ridley, you gotta make sure that you don't go through that door." And my focus would shoot to, Bob or Lorraine or Ashlyn or Tyler, because I was taking in every bit of information that I could. I felt so stinking lucky to be in that show. And then, I mean, to be nominated for one of the first Children's and Family Emmys for voice acting for that role was also just such a whew, uh, very, very cool moment. Because now, like, and Eric and I were talking about this a little bit. Eric Bauza, um, he's like, "Yeah, David, now you're always going to be Emmy nominated." I'm like, that is pretty cool.
That is really cool. Yeah. Well, congratulations on it,
Um,
and I
eh,
hope that one day, just like Bowser,
Thank you.
you'll get the win, and then you'll be Emmy winner, David Erriga. So, what is and I hope that you can speak to this because 'cause I'm very curious. What is Plucky's biggest strength for you voicing him that lends itself to achieving a great performance? Like, you leave the booth and you're like, "That was Plucky. I did it. I nailed it." And the same for Hampton. Like, is there something in the script or is it something that you latch on to that you're like, "Okay, that's what I need for these characters to work?"
um, I think I actually have to take it a little bit more macro than the question, because you're asking about sort of micro considerations for the characters. I think I
Yeah,
have to go macro and trust my Looney education. I have
I
to
love that.
trust my cartoon knowledge that it's like much of acting, right? Do the work, forget the work, trust the work.
Mhm.
Um, and I think having spent hour upon hour upon hour watching Looney Tunes, having spent hundreds of times watching how I spent my vacation,
Yeah,
having listened to hundreds of hours of Rob Paulson's Talkin' Tunes podcast and interviews with other actors about how they do stuff.
great podcast, by the way.
Oh my goodness. Big, big fan. I consider that my cartoon university. I owe that man at least my Emmy nomination. Um, um, but trusting that all of that will show up, right? There's something I've said in a couple of other interviews. There's a moment in one episode um, where there's supposed to be like a from from Plucky, and I as we were in the session, I was like, there's this thing that Daffy does every now and then where he just goes, "Mother."
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I said,
Big
at,
fan.
at this point, we know that Plucky's mom's name is Maria, right? And they're like,
Mhm.
yeah. I said, so can I try Maria? And we did that sort of, it's a deep, deep cut, right?
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that that kind of thing, when it shows up, will support. There's that difference with, a character in the Looniverse where, a scream in a lot of cartoons is going to be, but in the Looney Tunes world, it's like that whole, "Ah!" you know, um, and having the knowledge to I mean, it's a difference, right? It is
It
that
is. No, it is. Yeah,
open
for sure.
space, it's that throat rippy, whole thing.
You have Mel Blanc to thank for that.
Yeah, absolutely. But, like, knowing that, I think is my big gift coming into these Looniversity records, because I have a treasure trove of information to bring to the table.
One last question, and this is a fun one to round it all up.
Sure.
If you were enrolled in ACME Loonversity, what course or courses would you take?
I would kind of hope that there was a like a manifesting superpowers course.
Ooh, yeah,
Because there's often a need in cartoons for characters to take on superpowers. So
absolutely.
whether they be altered or assisted by Wile E. Coyote, creating formulas for folks to take on superpowers, or whether it's just inbuilt in all of them, in
Sure.
each Tiny Toon. Um, I don't know, but I think that would be the course I would like to take, because I'm a bit of a nerd myself.
So you would just like to learn about all of the superpowers a toon can possess.
And manifesting them, how to
Okay.
manifest them, not just the history of,
Mhm.
not just cataloging it all, but how do you bring them into your everyday life?
Well, Hampton does get to turn invisible
That's
in
true.
one episode.
That is true. Where are my pants? Oh, there they are.
Ashley and I joked about that too. She wanted to be invisible.
Mm.
So, very on point. We're keeping with the superhero type abilities here. And it's not unknown to Looney Tunes. You had Wile E. Coyote himself don a Batman cape and
Yeah.
cowl to try to catch the Roadrunner, and Super Rabbit exists. So there
Mhm.
are superpowered carrots that allow him to fly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I'm saying, like, how did they learn to do that for those performances? If that's what we're going to consider the Looney Tunes are performances,
Yeah.
and that's what the Tiny Toons are at Acme University to learn how to, replicate, how did that happen? Or was it all
Oh my
special
gosh.
effects?
I need this episode. I need there to be an episode about this now. So, thank you for that, and I am definitely gonna go back and rewatch it, and I implore all of you to go back and check out Tiny Toons or rewatch it if you haven't already, because David's throughout, and never know where he's gonna pop up next. So David, as he's popping up right now, David, where can people find you online, and do you want them to?
They can find me on, Instagram at ERRIGO, my last name, voice, Errigo voice. Um, I probably won't answer DMs, but, if you comment on stuff, a lot of times I like and, reply, especially if they're nice things. If you're being a jerk, I'm not gonna pay you any attention, because I don't reward bad behavior.
There's no
Um
time and place for that behavior anyway.
And then over on, Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it,
Oh, yeah.
it's the same thing at Arrigo Voice. We'll see how long that one sticks around, because there's all sorts of turmoil on that platform. I don't know.
There
But
really is, it's
Instagram,
a
I think,
weird
is staying.
time. What was that?
But Instagram, I think, is staying, at least for me.
Yes. I believe so.
Okay.
And, there's Blue Sky, and there's a whole bunch of other things out there
And I
now, and
think I have
it's getting a little crowded.
and I think I have those just to, like, claim my name, so I'm probably the same profile name on those. I don't know.
Well, it's This Means Podcast if you want to follow the podcast and stay up on everything going on in the Looniverse over at This Means Podcast or OFC This Means Pod on X, formerly Twitter. I don't know why we're still doing this, but we are, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, right.
So also check out the YouTube where you might see this video and plenty of other content around Tiny Toons. And keep it right here because as always,
That's not all, folks.
love it.